we've got a number of people watching on big screens with, I think the maximum is 9 people in a room, all spaced out on their own table. So welcome to all of you. If you're the first time joining one of our seminars, I hope you enjoy.
So we got a 2014, which has been on the yeast for like 5.5 years, and 2013, which has now been on the yeast for 6.5 years, and 2012, which has been on the yeast for 7.5 years. So an interesting experience. We always say that you should have time on the cork as well. So you'll notice that these wines, for the age of them, they're quite fresh. If you allow more evolution on the cork, you'll get more richness and more of a yeast extract character. I mean, I've got the 3 corks that we pulled out on these 3 bottles here. You can see the corks, you know, they've been in for a very short period. It's like about a month, and they almost revert to their cylindrical shape, just a slight mushroom. If they spend 6 months to a year in the bottle, they end up with a tighter waist and a flared mushroom look. But if they've been in the bottle for like 2 years, they end up not even flaring out at the bottom. And after 3 years, you start to lose pressure.
All 3 of these vintages, they all have exactly the same amount of dosage. So we did that just to ensure that you can really experience the different time on the lees. So all 3 vintages has exactly the same dosage, and the only difference is the different times on the lees.
Recently disgorged bubbly, even if it has been on the lees for a very long time, stays quite fresh until it goes onto the cork. Everybody who has cases of this can pour themselves 3 glasses, because we're going to go through the different wines. I think, Dean, you with your crowd in that room at Ehrenvale, you're going to have to do this again for them in 9 months' time, so they can see what happens once the bubbly's been on the cork for a little bit, because then the whole thing's going to be completely different. Jeff, take us through the flight.
Yeah, I can kick off. We're gonna start with a younger wine and work our way towards the 2012. You can see all of those Monro Bruts have been highly awarded. It's important for communicating a message of quality. The SAWI award is probably one of the best, and averaging of all the awards for the year, and if you do well there, it's a good indication of quality. The 2014 got a Michelangelo trophy for best SA Cap Classique. 2014, it was the last year where there was still a bit of rain around. You know, after that we had a sort of a 3 to 4 year drought. 2014 was relatively ripe. I actually think this 2014 is a bubbly with beautiful richness. It's got great length. There's a berry fruit element to it, and then there's a little bit of citrus that gives it the vibrancy, and it's slightly richer in style than the 2013, for example. And I love the balance on it, and all of these wines have a chalky element to them, which is a combination of the terroir, but also the yeast acid balance. I think with a little bit of time on the cork, this 2014 wine is going to be quite a blockbuster in terms of intense flavor. It's going to be something that you can really enjoy with food. I mean, Monro Brut is not really your classic aperitif style of bubbly. It's more of a food bubbly because it has got richness of flavor. Xander, is anything you want to add to the 2014?
No, I agree. It's beautiful, very rich. It's got all the typical Monro characters, full on the palate, lovely yeasty notes. And like I said, time in the bottle is just going to add to this bubbly's length and quality.
And I think you'll also agree that although we use a bit of oak, you don't pick up any obvious oak character. All it does is help with the evolution. And one thing the oaking does is, you know, remember we've got base wine in barrel with low SO2 levels, and you get a slightly deeper color. So all our Monro Bruts with that barrel component and the extra time, plus 40% red fruit, you do end up with a color that's quite deep, but still very attractive. This is basically the bubbly that you're going to be buying for the next year if you buy our Monro Brut. And we've just started selling it.
Okay, good. And the 2013, you know, Xander wasn't really here in 2013. Well, he definitely wasn't here in 2013. Where were you in 2013? Tasmania.
Tasmania, yeah.
So at least you were working with bubbly at the time. So Jeff, the 2013, was that a slightly warmer vintage? Cooler?
The 2013 was a cooler vintage, but you know, very healthy vintage. We actually had a good sugar acid balance, and the fruit was very healthy. And in those days, we were still depositing whole bunches into the press from 20 kilogram lug boxes directly. It was quite a tough job. I'd already actually personally given up spending the whole day chucking grapes into the press, although I did try to do a pallet each vintage to avoid having to go to the gym. It was quite a manual task, and 2 weeks everybody loved it, but the third week became quite tough for all our staff. So that's why we decided to mechanize it more. Xander and I tasted it earlier, and we felt it was probably showing the freshest of the three, and has a very lively character with a citrus element, and slightly more yeasty flavor than the 2014, but less than the 2012. But when I say yeasty, I'm talking about that baked bread or almost doughy character, but not yeast extract, because the moment you put the wine on the cork and you let it evolve, the yeasty flavor changes into something more like Marmite. Here we have, again, that fresh, chalky finish, which coats the palate and the tongue. Xander?
Yeah, I must say, like you said, out of the three vintages what we've tasted, this one definitely tastes the freshest out of all of them. But you get that extra time on the lees. You still pick up all that catalytic characters from the yeast, and sort of get a little bit of an almond skin character on it. I think longer time on the cork, it's just going to bring it into its own, and that freshness will also help carry it through a bit more. I think it will take a bit longer than the others. It will take a bit longer to get to that real development where the 14 and the 12 is for me. But I really like it. It's really fresh, nice, and it shows the vintage as well. Like I said, it was a cooler vintage, and this really reflects it in the wine, which is nice to see as well.
Now, it's funny on this one, which I didn't pick up on the other, was a little bit of that marzipan, which Xander just mentioned, that almond character. I mean, it's a little bit different from the 2012 and the 2014. But yeah, good vintage variation. And then Jeff, if you want to kick off on
yeah,
the
I think the 2012 clearly has a little bit more yeasty character, but we're talking about fresh yeast like baked bread. It runs right through the wine, and like I say, that will become a more expressive version of yeast with time on the cork. But interestingly, I find that being an older wine, the Pinot Noir is starting to show a bit stronger, because Pinot matures quicker than Chardonnay. I mean, if you're making a prestige cuvee, you always use a bit more Chardonnay than red fruit, because Chardonnay has the greatest longevity of the three champagne varieties that are generally used. So if you use the proportion of Chardonnay we use, it helps to keep the wine a long time. But as the wine gets older, even during the reductive maturation stage, I think the red fruit starts to stick out its head a bit more. I actually find the Pinot a bit more berry fruit coming through, and a bit more of the sort of candied element, but still very lively and fresh, great length. I mean, for an 8-year-old wine, okay, it's recently disgorged, but for an 8-year-old wine, it's beautiful, and there is a richness and a plushness to this wine that really appeals to me. This appeals to a toppy like myself, And I think it's I think it's beautiful.
Very interesting, like you said, Jeff, on this one where you get all that floral, that Pinot Noir really coming through, especially that berry character. And on this one as well, I find also the chalkiness comes out a bit more for me compared to the other two. But I find really that berry floral Pinot Noir character that's showing, especially on the older wine that's really showing now. I find that very interesting, and yeah, I also enjoy it as a younger.
So the 2014 hasn't really had a chance yet to show what is going to win award-wise. The 2012 of the three, obviously, so far is the most awarded. It was a John Platter 5-star, and it got the International Wine and Spirit Competition trophy. That's over champagnes and everything else. So it did really well for us. But it's completely different when it's recently disgorged. So if you taste this against one that had been on the cork for 2 years, it would be a totally different story. Yeah, so if you have an overview, Jeff, on now, what is the consensus?
You know, tasting these three wines shows me that the kind of attention to detail that we paid to our top cuvee has paid off, and that, you know, we certainly managed to put something in the bottle that is consistently good. It takes time and it takes cost to do this. So there is a price tag on the Monro Brut. We think it's worth putting in this effort. It's a category that's done really well for us. It's great to see a lineup like this where the only difference is the yeast contact time and the vintage. And it just shows you an element and highlights something on its own.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks so much for joining us. It's been great. I'm not sure if we'll fit in another webinar this year, maybe another bubbly one closer to Christmas.
Thanks, guys.
I hope you all enjoyed it, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us.